Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. I recently joined as a member, and you can too. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with the advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co.
And please put unprofessional development in the How Did You Hear About Podgo? That will give us a little finder's fee. Thank you. Hello, unprofessionals. So as you know, now we're doing real commercials, not just the silly ones that we normally do. So today I've got with me my daughter Micah. Say hello, Micah.
Hi.
She has an Etsy account. It's called what?
Roo Makes Bracelets.
Roo Makes Bracelets, okay? We'll put a link in the show notes for you for sure. So she makes some friendship bracelets. She even has one that is kind of an unprofessional bracelet where she's made the unpro letters in the bracelet. So if you need a bracelet, go to Roo's Bracelets. Anything else you want to say about your bracelets?
No.
Okay. But she's a little kid. She's 11 years old. She's entrepreneuring. You know, support her. And go to Roo's Bracelets. Click the link in the show notes. Thank you. Say goodbye, Micah.
Bye.
Unprofessionals, we need your help. Mealy and I keep trying to explain to the world how special we are, but they won't believe us. Here's what you can do. Check in the show notes for the link to the People's Podcast Awards. And please nominate us so the rest of the world can realize exactly how amazing we are. Enjoy! Welcome, unprofessionals, to an exciting episode of Unprofessional Development. I'm Tedisco.
And I'm Mealy. And today we have with us Bruce Dixon. Who's Bruce Dixon? You don't know already? Well, he is, according to his resume, polymath, social entrepreneur, nonprofit CEO, corporate director, and global citizen. That's a whole lot of stuff there. So apparently he's everything and a bag of 7 chips.
How are you doing today, Bruce?
Terrific and wonderful, in that order.
There we go. That would be alphabetical order, just in case for those following at home.
Yeah, who's the math and who's the English?
I'm math.
I'm
Okay.
English. Well, I
Yes.
try to be.
Fair enough.
But I like English and he likes math, so we both kind of, we're not,
nerds.
neither one of us are, I don't know if we're all the way polymaths, but we're poly-somethings, okay?
That's interesting as well.
I'm polynomial, I guess.
I was going to say, it sounds like a different podcast, however.
Yes. Neither of us are polyamorous, I don't think.
Oh, okay.
You're not, right?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
Judgments.
No judgments, though. Not at all. Right? Yeah, interesting. Whole nother interesting
Seinfeld
conversation. Yeah.
Some days I'm polytheistic.
Yes, I mean, we're definitely polysyllabic.
Oh, yes. Yes, absolutely. Do you need a napkin to wipe that away from your lips?
I do. So, Bruce has very many, charitable and entrepreneurial ventures. So we decided to do something a little bit different today. And so I don't have the music and we don't have an aquarium, but we're going to play Shark Tank. Okay?
No, it's okay. We're on a podcast. We do have an aquarium. We rented it. It is beautiful. It's right behind us.
It is absolutely beautiful.
There's tiger sharks, there's great whites, all of those barracudas.
Couple clownfish. There were more clownfish, but we let the sharks in, and there are fewer clownfish now.
Speaking of that, Tedisco, I was talking to my wife. I'm like, okay, which one of the sharks am I, and which one of the sharks is Tedisco? She said I would be Robert, but we couldn't figure out who Tedisco was.
I'm not gonna lie, I've never seen Shark Tank, so I think I'm just gonna be the Paula Abdul, because that's the closest show I know with judges.
I figured a little bit more. We could actually, instead, we could be Finding Nemo, and you are Marlin, and I am Dory, Tedisco. So that's
interesting. That's interesting. Well, I've actually done some cage diving with great whites, so this is absolutely appropriate for me.
Man,
that's cool.
Yes. Was there chum involved?
Tons of chum. Unfortunately, I had to get a prosthetic, but it all worked out quite well.
You didn't miss that leg.
Wow.
No,
yes.
not at all. I actually helped my golf swing a little bit.
Yeah,
that's good. So we're gonna play
Shark Tank. And so what you're going to do, as serious or as fake as you want to be, because it sounds like you're ready to go wherever, come in and pitch us what you do and what you're doing and why people should invest in the Bruce Dixon universe.
Yeah, interesting. So I think everything should start with context. Like, how did I end up here today doing what I've done? And it goes back to my childhood, right? And so I grew up in New York, and one of you is a New Yorker. Grew up in upstate New York, and my parents, wonderful human beings they were, adopted me and 7 girls.
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Wasn't my idea. But the 7 girls, that is.
So you're the reverse Snow White, basically.
Yes. Yeah. Well, in so many ways.
Well, they all little. Are all the girls little people?
That was pretty good.
Specific adoption agents.
Yeah, to say the least. I grew up in Albany.
Okay.
Yeah, small Albany. So my parents adopted us, and my mother maybe completed the 3rd grade, and my dad maybe the 7th or 8th. But education to them was the way out, right?
But this is your adoptive parents that you said.
Yeah, my adoptive parents.
That had that education level.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, exactly. And
okay, I wasn't sure if it was your birth parents. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, my adoptive parents, and they were pretty stern about this is the ticket out, right? Like this is this. So I often say that my mother would say to me things like, "I can't help you with your trig homework, but I know the difference between A and F." And A is better.
Right,
and
there we go.
F is not allowable. And I was probably more afraid of disappointing my mother than I was, the pain of actually sitting up and staying up at night and studying.
Okay.
But education was always sort of the way out. And unfortunately, when I was 11, my father died suddenly.
Oh, wow.
And my mother had a heart attack on the same day upon hearing of his death and was partially disabled and never worked again.
Oh, my goodness.
So I bring that up only from the perspective, and you think about a young African-American man in an urban setting, and, there are many paths that my life could have taken.
Yes.
If it were not for wonderful teachers and educators.
Aww.
Right? And, when you're 11, you're thinking about that, right? You're just, you just realize there were some people who cared a lot about you who seemed to take an interest in you in ways that I couldn't understand. I'm like, why are you guys spending much time with me? Or why are you guys inviting me to your homes on weekends or trips with you and your family? So, that's kind of the backdrop, right? So I finish high school, go to college, and graduate from college and started my work career, working in corporations, and, had a wonderful opportunities to do amazing things there and do things I never thought I could do, and made more money than I thought I'd ever make in my life. And, life was swimming along well. And then I had this weird thing happen, weird in that I was asked by the CEO of this major company to be a loaned executive to one of the local high schools that had lost accreditation. Right?
Oh, wow.
So, I'm the MBA, and it's like, we need someone to go over there and help with accreditation. They're in our neighborhood. We need to do things. And I'm thinking, well, it's the CEO's pet project. I'll ride in on my horse. I'll get 6 months to this. I'll kind of figure out a strategy, throw some money at it, and voila. We're done, right?
That's how you fix schools. Yeah, it takes 6 months to fix a school and a little bit of money.
Right.
Yes.
And then I'll ride off into the sunset with an award in tow, and I'll go on to conquer some other mountain at this point. Well,
yes.
So I like to tell this story to my friends because being the corporate MBA guy, pretty buttoned up kind of person, I go to the school, right? So I have an appointment at 9 o'clock with the principal, right? And this is really my first foray into urban settings, which we can talk about at another time, but this is kind of my first foray in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm there at 8:50, right? 10 minutes at least before in the principal's office, right? So I walk in, hi, I'm Bruce Dixon. I'm here from this insurance company. I'm here to help you guys, and I'm here to save the day. Where's the principal? And she goes, sit down. He'll be with you in a minute. So, it's 9 o'clock. It's 10 after. It's 20 after. It's 9:35. Now, this is unheard of in a corporate setting, right? Like, so what am I, chopped liver here? So at some point I was like, you need to go tell this human that I'm here and we need to get on with it. And she's like, yeah, sit down for a few more minutes, sir. So a few minutes later, this guy scurries out of an office and he's like, you Bruce Dixon? And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, come on in. Right. So we walk in the office and it's chaos. There are two women arguing in Spanish. There's a guy with a dog. There was a police officer in there. And we walk in and I'm like, what is this? and who are you? And they're like, oh, well, I'm this, a person who helps the school out as a volunteer. I'm like, well, who's the principal? And there's this human sitting in the corner sort of mediating this chaos. And he finally goes, oh, Bruce, hi, nice to meet you. Come on in. And we start chatting. And I'm like, what is this?
Can we take care of the dog at least?
Yeah, right. Like, what am I doing here? Like, what did I do in my corporate life that led me to this interestingness? So we finally decided that it would be a good idea that he and I went on a walk so we could talk. Mm-hmm. And we walked around a few classrooms and he walked me into one classroom and it just kind of off the cuff said, this is Bruce Dixon. He's blah, blah, blah. Bruce, could you explain to them why risk management is an important thing? Risk management and insurance. Well, so the only thing that came to mind for me was to create a scenario, right? Like, you're a rock star, rapper, or somebody, you have this wonderful house and car, you have an accident. I'm the victim. What's going to happen? They're like, oh, they're going to sue you, man. This is what's going on. So great. This is why we need it. So we had a great time. So you walk out of the classroom and the principal says, who taught you how to engage with students in that way? And I was like, never done it before. Never want to do it again. So let's keep moving around. And that led to, me being on the school improvement team. And that led to me speaking to more kids. And then I was in another classroom one day and for the first time in my adult life, I remembered my childhood. And I remember being in school. And this teacher was having an awful time with the students, right? Like, it was just awful. It's just, this is not going well. And everybody's having a bad time. And I just remembered, I remember being 12 or 13 in a classroom, maybe, a math class. And I remember thinking, how am I going to get home today? How am I going to get through the bullies today? Because I don't have brothers there, and my sisters didn't care about fighting with the other bullies. And the other thing is, what am I going to have for dinner tonight? Right. Or what's going to happen to me? And I remembered at some point, algebra wasn't the most important thing in my life. And if it wasn't for teachers who understood that, I would not be the human being I am today. So this started this cascade of me mentoring boys and being on I was actually a commencement addressment speaker at their graduation. So I'm fully in. Then I woke up one day and what I'd been toying with at the time was, how do I honor my parents? Right? How do you honor someone who's adopted you and all these wonderful people and given us these great opportunities and all the other people who along the way? And then I was like, you know what? What if I found a way to provide those students with some of the opportunities that I have? And then that led to a series of things. And one day I was presented with an opportunity to run an educational nonprofit that served the mission of basically inspiring, preparing underrepresented youth to pursue careers in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And I saw the light, right? I saw the light in that. This was a great opportunity for me to take, as LeBron James says, take my talents to this organization in a way that I can leverage all of this
championships
skill and win championships, right? Leverage all of this business skill and passion to provide opportunities for these students outside of maybe what they could.
You give them an opportunity and you try and change their lives.
Yeah, right. At the same time, honoring my parents and doing things like that. So took the reins of that organization and was just so struck with so many things. So let's take a step back. I've got to say this, right? Like, I literally had to go and apologize to all of my friends who were teachers, right? Because I'm serious, right? Because when I'm working in the ivory towers of this corporate space, right? We'll look out the window and we're kind of like, those damn teachers, right?
Always whining.
Can't they figure it out? Like, how hard could it be, right?
Yes.
Like, just some kids in the classroom, teach math. Like, what's the big deal? Well, after spending some time at school and then having the opportunity to run a company that, interfaces with, 60, 70 schools per year, I realized I made a mistake, right? like teaching is got to be one of the hardest professions from this perspective, right? When I worked in a corporate environment, I had a department. I had 30 people on my team. Like if somebody didn't perform well, it's pretty easy. I fired you. right? So it's kind of like, okay. And plus when you came to work every day, everybody knew the rules, right? Like you show up, you got to leave the bad attitude thing home. You got to come here at least pretending that you want to be here and that you want to participate, right? And there's some things you have to do.
Yes.
You contrast that with a teacher, you've got 30 bundles of energy that are all over the map. And like, and many times, understandably, I don't want to be here.
Nope.
right? You're nice guys, right? But I'm not really that interested in this stuff. And you've got to find a way every day to find a way to reach their hearts and minds.
Oh, by the way, you got to interview and look at the resumes of those 30 people. They weren't just random 30 people.
I could choose them.
Right. They actually probably most likely had some qualifications to do what they were being asked to do, as opposed to being like somehow socially promoted into your corporation. Now, obviously there's things that happen with nepotism and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
But in general, most of them have the necessary tools to do what you're asking them to do.
The tools, competency, skills, right? And requisite references to prove it.
Right. And if they don't, then goodbye.
And what you said about the kids not wanting to be there, I once heard it said that in our society, there are 3 kinds of people who aren't where they want to be, and but are forced there. And that's prisoners, people in mental health wards, and students.
Wow. Yes.
That's
interesting.
It.
All right. Interesting. Right. So I realized that teachers had an incredible job, right? A really tremendously difficult job to do, and that it's hard. Like how do you address the fact that a kid shows up and their mom and dad may have been fighting up, or I didn't have food to eat last night, or I'm not sure what I'm going to eat tomorrow, and then it's kind of like, did you do your algebra homework?
Right.
Like the disconnect, right? So I started to appreciate the tremendous role that teachers play and how difficult the job was. So along the way, as we were building programs and experiences, I thought, well, wait a minute, right? What is the best way that I can influence young people in terms of numbers of students, right? I can have programs where I work with them, but teachers are with them every day. So if I can find ways to partner with teachers and provide them with opportunities to increase their ability to perform in many ways, they'll have a better opportunity to work with students and support this whole notion of students performing better and being better at what they do, right? So we did some interesting things. We realized we have this unique opportunity. We're not attached to the school systems. We're independent. So I don't have the same bureaucracies you have. I don't have the same challenges you have, right? I can make decisions on how I hire, who I hire, what the curriculum might be, how long, what the dosage might be, what the metrics might be.
Right.
So
we're the Gotham Police Department, and you're Batman.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, right? Yeah, I love
outside the
that.
system.
I love that. So we started to look for what are big challenges, right? So one of the big challenges relative to science, technology, engineering careers is mathematics as a gateway, right? So working in urban districts where, mathematics competencies and skill attainment levels were really difficult. And it's kind of a non-starter. It's a gateway, right? If you can't get through basic algebra, I think some of those careers are basically off the table.
Yeah.
Right? So, and then we found things like this wonderful thing called summer learning loss.
Yep.
Right? Like,
summer slide, sometimes they call it.
Summer slide, like, holy smokes, right? It's a big deal, right? So you've got this time during the summer and you got the slide. So we started to think, oh, you know what? If we were just to look out, this is 10 years ago, right? So we started to look out and we realized that computer-mediated instruction was coming, right? Like sooner or later, the blended learning model has to take hold. Interesting in this coronavirus time, isn't it?
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Quite appreciate it.
Right. So it's coming. And for many of the school districts we spent time with, their systems are too big to really integrate it in a way that makes sense, right? They're big. They're Titanics, it's going to take a long term to. So we thought, like, what if we found ways to create an experience for teachers where they could start to engage in learning and using these tools now right? And they sort of become sort of the champions in their districts. That would be great. But if we could do that during the summer and build the experience such that their learning provided the students an opportunity to have significant math gains.
Okay.
Right? Right. So it's like we flip the whole model to say our customer, quote unquote, is the student. But the model we chose to build is a teacher development model through which the students or the teachers work with the students in live environments to help the students some of their challenge.
Okay.
Right, if you would. So we found a company and they had created this gaming system, which basically it's a 3D immersible video game system where students could go into play and, the big aha. Oh, you play video games. Oh, but you move through the video game world by solving math problems.
Okay. There we go.
And you could use the computer, the analytics there to calibrate the game to account for the difference in math skills. So you're in a game and you don't know, that Bruce is, functioning at this grade level or another. But for the teacher, they could take all the data from that and then we could sort of create and understand where the holes are, right? Like where are the holes and do that. So that led us to creating all of these models and these programs that were similar to that. And the results were amazing for all concerned.
Were you still stationed around Albany or had you moved at that point?
Connecticut. Yeah. So I moved to Connecticut at the time and we worked with all of the largest urban school districts in the state.
Oh, great.
Okay. I was going to say, I've got like 7,000 questions now to discuss. I don't know about you. So
that sounds good to me.
Yes. So
I stopped at 6,800.
Yeah.
Blacker.
So, well, the first big question, I'm sure, that a lot of people want to know is, we were going to say you on Shark Tank, so we're the sharks. You legitimately have to go to people and ask them to write checks, I'm guessing. Is that what you do, or is there someone that does that for you? Who's writing these checks to make all this happen?
Yeah. Lots of people and organizations, primarily corporations and local foundations.
Okay.
Yeah, because you think about it, for many of the corporations and foundations, they have a stake in making sure the communities in which they have their footholds are performing well. So to the extent you go to them and say, hey, you know what, we've got this cool opportunity to help students, gain proficiency in mathematics, which ultimately translates to possibly them working at your company, they're kind of interested.
That's cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's important. I don't really want to live and work and vote around a whole bunch of uneducated people.
Right. And also, since it's a Shark Tank, if you look at it from the perspective of an investor, right, many would say if you can help students improve their math performance, that would be great, right? That would be enough.
Right.
But if you say we can help students increase math proficiency drastically during the summer. Oh, yeah, and by the way, there's a wonderful place for them to go during the summer and also learn 21st century skills, whether it be communication, interpersonal skills. Oh, and the big aha, we're training teachers on skills for the future in the same model, right? Oh yeah, I'm going to write a check to help students be better at mathematics anyway. And none of the kids want to go to summer school. You can accomplish all of that in this one model. Sign me up.
So let's talk numbers. How many students, how many schools? You said 60 or 70 schools. Is that what you said? How do you choose the students and the teachers who are involved in this?
All right. So we got to take a diversion first, and it'll be a quick one.
Yeah.
The quick diversion is 4 years ago, I left Connecticut and I left my role as CEO of that company.
Okay.
So when we say who does, not me any longer.
Okay.
When we can talk about the 4 years, because I think that's pertinent.
Yeah.
The organization worked with approximately 60 schools throughout the state of Connecticut.
So it's schools specifically, not districts, like some within the same district, 60 schools. Okay.
Exactly. Okay. And we would nurture, train roughly 130 teachers per year.
Wow.
And I think it's important to mention this, right? Because when you talk numbers, you need some context. You can have a program where you have students in a program and the duration or dosage of the program is 10 hours, right? You get 10 hours, you have these wonderful opportunities to be exposed to things. Our programs ranged from 175 hours to 200 hours.
Wow.
Right? So I think sort of this idea of unprofessional development, my understanding, particularly from the two of you, that for many teachers, professional development, on the lowest side of it in terms of effectiveness, it's horrible.
Yes.
And maybe the plateau is mediocre.
Most times. But in 10 years, that has been most notably the exception, and the horrible being the norm, and the medium being the, like once a year or so, that's something like
2000s Adam Sandler movies. Like, I'm sure there's a good one or two, but for the most part, oh man.
but so, and the work we did with the teachers, think about during the summer, right? They would have 200 hours
that you were paying them for.
Time. We were paying them for.
That's
but
nice.
200. It's 200 hours, and they're learning skills of the future, which means down the road they'll be able to move into positions around the districts once some of these things start to take hold, because they're the only ones who can do the things that there need to be done there.
Right, because now I'm going to jump back into Shark Tank mode. So let's do the numbers. Show me your profits. Like, I want to see your sales. I want to see your profits. Where are these kids now? You said you've been out 4 years. The program started how many years ago? 10 years ago?
Well, my tenure was 14 years ago.
So, okay. And how this has proven, what ROI did the people get?
Yeah, this is fascinating, by the way, because it actually taps into sort of like both sides of my brain in the world, right? Because my first sort of foray into work was corporate. So the profit, revenue, expenses, things like that were really tangible, right?
Cool.
Running a nonprofit, the metrics are a little different, right?
Yes.
So the profit is basically not financial. Right. So, that's why it's a nonprofit, right? So you can't profit. So the metrics, right? So I'll give a couple of examples. About a month ago, I got an email, and it was, "Hi, Mr. Dixon, wanted to say hi. How are you doing? Wanted to say thanks. Just wanted you to know I just got a job at Tesla."
Nice. Wow.
Okay. That's kind of cool.
That's very cool.
That's kind of interesting. Or, a few students, I was 4 years ago before I left, I was at MIT, for one reason or another. And literally I was walking down a hall and somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Mr. Dixon." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." She's like, "Oh yeah, I just got into MIT and I'm doing well."
Wow.
If you would. So there are many metrics, and we could take a long time doing that. But if you go back to the math-based program, right? So the big metric was really what's the progress for students typically, So we did a pre-assessment before the summer with the students, and obviously after the summer program, and then we do another quick math assessment like 3 months into the school year.
Okay.
And on average, students gained what we determined to be 3 to 4 months of math progress.
Wow.
But that's significant in that they would typically lose 2 to 3 during the summer.
Yes. So it's really a net gain of like 5 to 6 months, somewhere in that range. Yes.
Right. But the gain is more significant when you consider what they've learned, right? Because what we were doing in terms of the mathematics is we were going back and plugging and filling the holes. Right? So, you're in 8th grade in 7th grade, but you're functioning on a 3rd grade math level. Yeah. And if you don't get the fundamentals, it's a non-starter. Yeah. So it's kind of hard to calibrate, but the fact that you were able to help students basically learn the basic building blocks of mathematics so that they could, it's kind of like going slow to go fast. Right?
Yes.
So learn all of these core principles and skill so that you can actually move forward and run, if you would. Yeah. And, we served roughly in all of the programs, roughly 2,000 students per year. Right.
Okay. Wow.
But that's important when you consider that many of our programs were, 200 hours time.
Yes.
So it's not, it's not the inch deep, mile wide kind of
you didn't give 2,000 kids a burger. You know what I mean? Because you could do that in one day. We served 2,000 kids. Yes. A 39-cent burger. Yes.
Right. And, for teachers in terms of teacher satisfaction, and interest, we had numbers, each year in and year out in terms of teacher satisfaction or my decision to come back, or I'd recommend this work to other teachers, off the scales each year.
That's
but
really good.
The more tangible stories were the emails that I can still get to this day. I just got promoted to district lead for STEM. I just was promoted to, right, because they're in positions to do things that others are not.
Wow.
Great.
So I guarantee you that there are people listening right now that are teachers that teach math and science.
Yeah.
Like, that want to be part of it. They would want to replicate it. They would want to do that. Like speak to that. So some guy that's in Texas here, right?
Yeah.
So he can't. So what would you say to the guy in Texas that is now drooling?
I'd say that there are tons of organizations around the country who are doing similar things. I think it's really ramped up a bunch, and quite frankly, I think it's going to ramp up even more now in sort of the, with the whole idea of what's happening with the pandemic. I would say first and foremost, look for opportunities locally, because there are many smaller kinds of organizations who are looking to do similar things. The other is, I think the summer is a fertile ground for what I might call sort of radical transformation, right? Because you've kind of got this captive audience, and you kind of have almost, 100% share of mind during the summer. Look for opportunities to engage with organizations during the summer, and look for opportunities to, it's like, for example, this might sound a little weird, but there are many organizations, incubators, around many cities. I think for teachers, it'd be a great opportunity sometimes during the summer to say, I'd love to come and spend a summer there.
Right.
Working with them, volunteering, because I think the technology is such now that there are ways in which we can help create better learning environments for students are there. And I think that would be a big one. The other is, the National Science Foundation lists lots of organizations who are similar to ours that are doing things around the country, and I'd say probably tap into that as well.
Okay.
Or they could catch up with me at some point.
Okay, cool. And we'll have all your details in the show notes and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
How to reach out to you.
Sure.
And now for a word from our sponsors.
Hey guys, this is an advertisement. A commercial if you want to know what it is.
And they do.
So this is especially for you folks in North Kakalaki and South Kakalaki. You have a house, you have a car, you have life. What do you need? You need insurance. You go, you know what? If I could buy my insurance from a former teacher, that's what I'd like to do. Hey Tedisco, do you know anyone that has a business selling insurance who used to be a teacher?
I do, and I think you do too. Pimentel?
Yeah, he used to teach with us, but he doesn't anymore. And apparently there's some guy Garcia that he knows. So they've got insurance. You need insurance. There's a link in the show notes.
We're all kind of looking at bottom line. We're looking at what's going to help us, what's going to be easiest. Check it out. Talk to them. Get a quote, and they will help you out.
And it's at Pimentel, Pimentel, Garcia.com. So you can email them that info. You can go to the website, or you can call 704-272-3535. It's all listed in the show notes. Swipe down and click, baby. You're there. And then get your insurance from a teacher, not from some weird lizard or from some ball guy who says ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-da-da. No, you don't want that. You want it from a teacher. That's where you want your insurance.
When you call up Pimentel Garcia Insurance, make sure you tell them you heard it from us. And now, back to the show. So, Bruce, I know that you are, so involved and invested in education.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious. So, why not become an educator? Like, what was it that made you look at the classroom and say, like, that's not for me?
Yeah. So
other than everything, like that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Right. So I think one of you mentioned that, and I think in your discussion about why you chose teaching, it was because you like to do lots of different things, and you don't like doing the same thing twice. So if you had to teach the same lesson 5 times, you do it differently each time.
Yep.
So I think it's kind of like this whole notion of know thyself. I'm a synthesizer by nature, right? I like to I'll give the example of like my favorite food. At least it was prior to the pandemic. I haven't been able to indulge so much in this. That it's a burrito, right? Because I love going to a place and seeing sort of a bunch of different options in front of me, and I can somehow taste the confluence of all of these things.
Right.
Right. That's how I see the world. That's how I approach everything. Right. So for me, I feel that I'm better suited outside of the system, where I can actually bring things to the table and synthesize things in a way that can provide what I might call extraordinary value to the people who decided to sort of be on the ground to do the work. So I love having sort of that connected but untethered, right? Relationship, because it gives me the space to roam. It gives me the space to explore, because, you need explorers and pioneers.
I'm just continuing to think of my Batman metaphor, because you might be Batman. I've never seen you and Batman in the same room.
Bruce and Bruce Wayne, right?
Bruce,
right?
Yeah, look at that. Yes,
I'm just saying.
I mean, hey, I like it. I like
there
it.
You go.
I like it. I like it. So, yeah, and I also say that I just wanted to say that, at a personal, really deeply personal level, the virtue that I aspire to daily is one of living sort of this life through the lens of compassion, right? That's for me, that is the virtue that I aspire to. It is sort of the reason that I sort of get up every day and what I pursue most vigorously. And one of the things I'd like to say is that I realize that, for many teachers, the engine that sort of drives sort of their desire to do what they do, is compassion, right? And I think because of that, teachers don't get the credit for their entrepreneurial and innovative natures, right? Because you think about this classroom, right? And these 30 wonderful bundles of joy, right? How do you deal with this daily when you've got all of these life challenges going on for the students? And I've seen creativity and innovation happen with teachers day in and day out, with the budgets you do or you don't have, with the supplies you do or you don't have, with the resources you do or you don't have. I just wanted to go on record and say, before this goes too far with this, I really wanted to commend all of you who are teachers and understand that from an entrepreneur's perspective, I think you're some of the most creative human beings on the planet, because you have to do it real time.
Yes.
Right? And whether it be having this little closet, like I walked into a classroom and there's like this cabinet. I was talking to this wonderful teacher in New Haven, Connecticut, and I'm like, what is this? And she says, I have to bring food because I know there are students here who are going to need food today. Yes. And I'm just like, wow. Or I have to bring this manipulative because this student will need this. This has nothing to do with my job description. This has nothing to do with how I'm going to get evaluated. But in order for me to help this person, right, today, I have to do this. So I wanted to go on record and say that I think teachers don't get enough credit for their creativity and ingenuity.
Speaking of which, that just triggered me this thing that I saw the other day. But they had a busy corner. So that kid that can't sit still, and maybe there's a jigsaw puzzle there, maybe there's like a Rubik's Cube, maybe there's fidget spinner, so that their mind is engaging, they're able to settle themselves and focus, because they can't work on a worksheet now, or they can't listen to the teacher speak, or they don't feel comfortable sitting in a group with other kids right now, that they just need some time, but they don't need to go to the ISS, the suspension room, or to go talk to an administrator because they couldn't sit still or they wanted to talk.
Yeah,
they just
being a kid isn't against the rules.
Right.
We gotta remember.
I'm like,
that.
That's brilliant. That, yes, you should have that. You know what I mean? I love the concept of the jumping off the cliff and building the plane on the way down. And teachers
and collecting data while it's falling.
And to collecting data while it's falling. Yes. But I think that does happen a lot.
And thank you for those kind words.
Yes, that is sweet. That really is sweet. And we do need
directly from the heart. Directly from the heart, man.
So, You alluded to the 4 years since you left, and if that applies to you, and you think it's relevant to what we're talking about here, when you apparently you left Gotham and joined the Justice League, is what I'm guessing.
I love it. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. It's the whole Black Panther movie, right? So after seeing that, it was over. I'm like, I got to jump in. Yeah, so it's interesting. I do think it's important in that, you think about education and sort of being lifelong learners, right? And so for me, it was sort of having this wonderful rocket ride of running this company and, winning awards and going to the White House and doing these other things. And one of the awards that I was fortunate enough to win was an opportunity to spend some time at Harvard Business School one summer. And, you're just exposed to lots of interesting things. And I was absolutely blown away, right? I met people and started to chat about things that when you're deeply engaged with running anything and running a company, you're very myopic, right? You got to spend 95% of your time making sure that your business is effective and efficient. Mm-hmm. So you don't have a ton of copious time to sort of explore, right? Mm-hmm. But in those few moments that I did, I started to get a sense that, whoa, wait a minute, right? There's a lot of other stuff going on in ways that I never really appreciated, whether it be, additive manufacturing and 3D printing, the whole AI, augmented learning, VR, AR. And I started to get my feet sort of wet and understanding like, oh my God, this is coming. Like this is happening and it's happening really fast. And
the future is now.
The future is now. And I started to get my arms and my head around this idea that, due to Moore's law and this sort of continual doubling of computer speed and power and right. And like, oh my God, this is like happening. So, you're slowly starting to move from this local and linear headset to this sort of exponential and global headset, right? Which is a chasm, right? Right. There's a chasm between the two. But I started to realize like, oh my God, like how am I going to do this? Right? How am I going to start to integrate some of this into my work? Because I think you have to, right? This is kind of the nice thing about not being tethered, right? So it's like, And I started various ways of, various things in terms of how I might do that. And it just got to a point where I felt like I was hitting my head against the wall, right? Meaning I'm doing the same things. I'm following the same patterns. I'm in this sort of the same fissure in my brain. And I needed to do something radically different in order for me to be able to perceive and see things radically differently. And I decided the best way for me to do that was to unplug from what I had known for so long. Right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't know if it was Abraham Maslow who said, like the person who has a hammer thinks every problem's a nail.
Nail. Yep.
Right. And for me, I'd pretty much done the same over many years. You practice the same thing. So I decided, the best way for me to do is unplug and try some different things. So I took a year and I transitioned out of my company and I thought, how do you do this? Right. And I'm thinking, well, I could go to PhD. I could do some other things, or I've always wanted to travel. And I thought, well, this will take you out of your comfort zone, right? You travel without sort of the spectrum of I'm on vacation, and you kind of go. So I started traveling and volunteering. I was actually started volunteer teaching in Europe and in Asia, and it started to unfold in ways that you could never imagine, right?
Whereabouts?
So started the whole trip in Spain. So I had an opportunity to teach there, and then Italy. Okay. And then from Italy, I went to Thailand.
So do you speak Italian, Spanish, and Thai?
I speak functional Spanish.
Okay.
And I speak some Italian. I actually played professional football, American rules football, in Italy a few years ago, so I had an orientation to it.
Hold on, let's just pause right there. You say what? Okay. So.
Sometime between being CEO of a corporation and swimming with the sharks, you gotta just play pro soccer.
So no, it wasn't soccer. It's American
football.
Football.
So you played in
Italy?
Yeah.
But it was not NFL Europe. It was a European league.
It's a European league. So actually, John Grisham wrote an amazingly interesting book called "Playing for Pizza."
Okay.
Right, and it's kind of a departure from his normal genre, but it's about the it's about the Italian football league I played in.
Okay. Oh wow.
And I am not the main character.
Okay. Did you meet him and speak to him?
I did not.
Okay.
I did not.
Did you? And would
but
there
I did
be?
read the book.
And who was the most famous other football player that played with you over there that maybe someone might have heard of? Just out of curiosity, I always like to just know those things.
No one.
No one.
I think I'm probably now like the poster child for like the Italian football. Because basically what they do is they don't have high school or college athletics.
Right.
So they create club leagues, and these club leagues, they invited Americans, like 2 or 3 Americans could play on each team. So it was club football. So they paid the Americans. So
and on our team, our kicker was a man named Papa John. Straight from Italy.
Yeah. I was going to say, I did have a friend of the family who played, like, basketball is kind of like the same, it's probably even bigger over there, I guess, the Italian basketball leagues and stuff like that. So, when you taught in Spain and Italy and Thailand, were you teaching speaking Spanish or speaking Italian, or were you teaching speaking in English, just out of curiosity?
Yeah, I actually taught conversational English.
Okay.
So, which was more fun than I ever could have imagined.
And was
That's great.
Was it part of was it one organization that took you to Spain and Italy and Thailand, or is it, yes? Okay.
Yeah, it was I found an organization, and, we they recruit and place people around the world to do what I did, right? So I'm not a certified teacher, and neither did I want to, be sort of formally locked into a classroom for a long period of time. So, the engagements were as brief as 2 weeks, and some were as significant as 2 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you were kind of like half guest speaker, half teacher-ish, I guess, huh?
Yeah, but it's been an amazing experience. So did that for a while. And then beyond that, I decided to allow sort of whatever this inner human was to express itself, and to see where it might take me. And it's taken me from everywhere from Namibia and Africa to Amsterdam, right? And doing things. So at some point in terms of education, right, I got to a point where I realized there are many things that I didn't do well, or things that frightened me, right? Like one, I wanted to scuba dive. And I actually enrolled in a scuba diving class, and, we're going through the class work, and it's like really great. And then they said, oh, you have to take a swim test, which makes sense. Right? So you have to take a swim test. I'm like, yeah, cool swim test. I've been in swimming pools before, no big deal. Well, we get in, they go, you have to do 10 laps. I'm like, that's a 10 laps? Like, and then they're like, you got to tread water for 10 minutes. And I'm like, well, like, first and foremost, like, I've never really done that. And like, but, how hard could it be? And, well, after like 2 laps, and every muscle in my body started to seize, because I'm like, I'm not swimming, I'm fighting, right? I'm wrestling, trying to wrestle with water. Well, that went, which led me to, maybe you shouldn't be scuba diving. Like, maybe you should learn how to swim.
And you were
That's a novel idea. I'm on a course. And I'm like, yeah, I'm out, right? I'm out. I got to learn to swim first. So I started to pursue things that frightened me. Mountain climbing, because I had issues with heights, and, swimming, water, snakes, right? Like I like this thing with snakes, like, just paralyzed around snakes. And, was fortunate enough to have a couple of experiences where I actually ended up, holding this wonderful yellow boa that was probably 10 feet long or something. So it was really forcing myself so far out of my comfort zone that it forced me to see the world in different ways.
So a Bruce who likes to work outside the system and embraces his fears. Did you ever have a fear of bats?
Yes.
No, of course not.
There you go. So now I'm going to get back into Shark Tank mode. So how do you make a profit from scuba diving and handling snakes and
well, he wasn't CEO at this point, though.
Mountain climbing? Because, I mean, if someone's going to pay me, I mean, obviously, I guess if you go on Fear Factor, then, and you eat some bugs, and then you can walk off with $10,000 or whatever they pay on Fear Factor. So are you still gainfully generating income in some way, or we've now reached a point of independence where we just kind of do that, or do you how do you fund yourself?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So so 4 years ago when I decided to jump on this train, I thought it would be like a 3-month deal, right? Do 3 months there and I'll come back and I'll join another group or another company and so on and so forth. Well, I couldn't have anticipated the wonder and joy and excitement associated with kind of like, I can just explore and I can travel and explore and I can, do things that I never thought I could do. And the world is a lot bigger place than I thought it was. And there are lots of wonderful people and places to go. And, it stretched out to 4 years. So I've funded, this with savings.
Okay. Wow.
And I decided, this is an investment in me.
Cool.
Right. This is an investment in Bruce Dixon. And
wow.
I am glad that I did that. And
yeah.
And so in terms of, what's the return on, on sort of this investment, right?
Right.
The return has been that I have a perspective on who I am in the world today that I could have never imagined. That's number one. Number two, when you think about the work that I intend to do, because I intend to sort of re-engage with students in some capacity, I think it's so much easier, right, to be an example versus talk about it.
Yeah. That's true.
And and some of the students that I've had conversations with, I've been back in the States for the last 4 months, has been, it's how would you possibly do that? And that it's an actual possibility. One, like you can self-fund a trip around the world for 4 years.
Yes.
Like how do you do that?
Yeah.
Right? Which I'm still scratching my head about how I did that as well. But beyond that, there's this sense of connectedness to the rest of the world that I couldn't have possibly had.
Yeah.
And, let's just kind of, and let's be frank about it. In the world that we're sort of currently sort of navigating, this notion of who we are as human beings, right, relative to other people in the world, for me, it was eye-opening.
Yeah.
And for as much as I understand and can appreciate and some of the challenges we're facing around this country relative to social justice, I've learned so much about human beings.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
Wow.
And I think that has widened my lens relative to who I am and who I want to become in this world and sort of the world that I would want to be a part of. So that's been a part of it. But the biggest piece in terms of Shark Tank,
yes,
is I think I've created sort of the neurological hardware and architecture that can see the world in a more exponential and global sense.
Wow.
So anything that I touch and would look to create is through that lens.
Yes.
So now, as an investor, you're engaging with someone who has had the opportunity to run companies, work in corporate, work in the social venture space, but also now one who has spent 4 years investing in a few things. One, how does Bruce Dixon, how does he become the CEO of himself?
Right.
Which I believe is the most important thing that I can do.
Yes.
I know how to take care of myself now.
Yes.
And I didn't 4 years ago.
Yeah. I was going to say, it is kind of like a corporate-y and buzzword, but I think it does apply. Create value. People say a lot. You know what I mean? Like, how do we create value? And what you've done is made Bruce more valuable.
I read an interesting quote. I think it was Rumi. I'm not sure, but it said when I was clever, I decided I wanted to change the world, right? But when I became wise, I decided to change myself.
There you go.
Right. And so for me, that has been, a big part of this. And, I over the 4 years took a deep dive into what might be called human performance, right? And which includes a relatively deep dive into neuroscience.
Right.
Right. And understanding sort of neuroscience of performance, et cetera. So it's allowed me to create sort of practices and routines that for me, prime me and help me prime myself for optimal performance.
And the English teacher in me commends you, because like the entire point of English is to, number one, gain empathy for people in all different areas and all different times and all different situations. But it's also asking those really big, deep questions and realizing everyone has a different answer. So if you ask people what should make us happy and what is success in America, you're going to get a very different answer than you would get in Namibia.
You got that right.
Yes.
So, and getting outside of yourself like that, I mean, that is the whole goal of it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. And I think what is education?
All right, Bruce, after everything we've discussed, I wanted to ask you, so what do you think, after everything you've learned and everything you've gathered together here, what do you think is the goal of education? Like what is the purpose of it all?
I think at the highest level, education is a vehicle and a tool to invite us to do the things that are necessary to produce the well-being of all.
That's really, really good. That's really, really good. So
all right, Bailey. So
yes.
I'm not going to lie. In terms of like Shark Tank wise, I think Bruce has a lot of great points. But our last guest had that gun that launched Twinkies.
Oh, so
yeah,
that's where you put the money. Yeah, you don't understand how we can invest in all.
Bruce talked all about compassion. That last person, they actually killed someone to get the money for the Twinkie launcher. So I gotta invest in them. But
I'm with you.
Yeah,
Yes.
Second place is good.
I'll take second place.
Yes, and that's not how Shark Tank works. To this guy, I can't believe you.
Good to know. I've never seen it.
I can't believe you never watched Shark Tank.
Does Tim Ferriss host it?
No, Mr. Wonderful does.
Whole nother story.
Is he in the Justice League too?
No, he is not. He's definitely an evil genius.
He thinks that he is.
He's more like Magneto than in the Justice League.
Good point. Good point. Good point. Good point.
Okay, well, I think we've got like just so much, and I think that unless there's anything else that you wanted to add.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd say is just wanted to a heartfelt thank you to all the teachers.
Oh,
right? I mean this. I this isn't hyperbole, and this isn't this is from the heart, man. Like I still remember Mr. Morlock, right? Who, when I was in sixth grade, came to me one day and said, "Hey, Bruce, I've got an opportunity for you. I want to make sure you're okay," and did some things for me then. Or Mrs. Golden or Mr. Lovett, right? I'm still in contact with my high school biology teacher, who, by the way, drove me and a friend of mine to our college visits, right? Because we couldn't, right?
Right.
So I'm still in touch with she and her husband. So I really wanted to say thank you, and to know that there are those among us around the world who recognize the tremendous sacrifice and dedication that you have to make in order to help our students around the world. And I think you're some of the most creative and genius and innovative people on the planet. So thank you very much from the heart.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, what we can do with a glue stick and some construction paper.
Hey, dude, I've not worked in 4 years. I'm not sure if I'm that guy.
Okay. Well, thank you again for coming on. We appreciate it. Quick shout out to your sister-in-law. Are you married or I can't remember. How do you know Sarah? Sarah is your
Sarah. Yeah, she's my partner's sister.
Partner, sister, whatever we call that. Your partner-in-law.
Yeah,
sister and partner.
But thanks. Great idea.
for getting you on here. And we just want to say again to everyone that's listening, stay unprofessional.
Thank you all for listening. Please subscribe and follow us on Twitter so you can keep laughing when the show's over. Next week, our guest is friend of the show, Amy Dahl. So here's a glimpse into the future with Amy Dahl.
You brought us the differences. What are the similarities? What did you do with your elementary school kids that you go, hey, this, I can't do it exactly, but if I kind of tweak it like this, this thing I did with my elementary school kids. By the way, I say elementary, not elementary or whatever weird word you're using.
Elementary. That's how it's Cisco. Do you say that? Elementary?
I think I read that in the library.
Yes, I say elementary.
I know. They, honestly, every single year that part has never left me. That's how we say it in upstate. Elementary.
Elementary.
Dear Watson.
They're like, why do you? My students are always like, why do you phonetically say like I sound out every syllable. I'm like,
because the letters are there for a reason. Use them.
The stuff that I put on my cookie sheet so that the cookies don't stick. What is that?
Wax paper.
Parchment paper.
Oh, aluminium, or is it aluminum? Or how do you say that in a weird way?
It's aluminum.
Okay, so you still say that. Yeah. Okay, you don't say aluminium.
I do say one weird word that I've never learned how to say right is bagel.
Oh no!
I know.
Well,
it's so weird.
I'm now in an episode of Community.
Yes. I have the one word that I can't ever pronounce because I spent too much time living on Long Island is those tiny dogs from Mexico?
Chihuahuas.
Chihuahua.
Yeah. Really?
A chihuahua.
I always struggled with Fort Lauderdale. That's a hard one for me to say. My mouth, it's too many things for my tongue to do at the same time.
Can we
know what kills?
Go after you.
Oh no, I was going to say how people say like, I always say calm, like here's the palm of my hand. And my students are like, that's not right. But I don't know how people pronounce the LMs at the end. Like I always say calm.
Calm?
Yeah, no, that doesn't sound right. Palm.
Okay.
Like palm. Yeah. You know.
Okay.
Drawers and draws means very different things in the South.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Joe, close the drawers. Like
yes.
Yeah, but can we just spend the next 20 minutes trying to break down Worcestershire sauce?
Oh no, let's not. Let's leave that one alone.
Worcestershire.
We should.
Yes,
so,
but
okay, I'll answer your question. So what are the similarities?
Yes.
So the funny thing is, I think one of the biggest